everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for those who at any given time will follow this presentation, which introduces the course on democratic participation and right of initiative. I know you are a group of students, of young people from different countries of Europe, and I'm very, very happy to open up this course with the few slides of introduction that I have prepared for you all. My name is Nicoletta Dentico, and I am a health activist. I lead the Global Health Justice Program at Society for International Development, and I also teach global health in the course of global humanities at the Università La Sapienza in Rome. So let's start with this overview, this introduction and presentation of the essence of the course on democratic participation and right of initiative. Let me introduce, first of all, the topics of this aerial view that we are going to provide. I really want to start with the news of these days. They are the news of these days. I don't know when you will be listening to this presentation, but I am sure that even in 1 month or 2 months or even 6 months, we will continue to hear about the piece of news that I want to share with you in a minute. I want to highlight in my presentation a fundamental concept that participation is freedom, and freedom is participation. So I care to provide a few elements of what active citizenship is, of course, not only in Europe, but also in Europe. And I also want to highlight, because we need to follow the principle of reality, the hurdles, the obstacles, the challenges that exist, increasingly so in Europe, to our activism and active initiatives as European citizens. I would like to then shift to how we can make our voice heard, how we can, you can ensure that your voices as young generations, as young people are heard, and what instruments and spaces exist. And then I want to give you a few examples of already experienced citizens' activism stories, and also the lessons that we can learn from 2 specific case studies, one still ongoing. So let's start with the now. And this is the now of today. It is the Global Sumud Flotilla. It is this fantastic experience of civil society, of popular mobilization to provide a humanitarian assistance and also to make a political point that the people of Gaza need to be saved, need to be rescued from the brutal attacks of the Israeli soldiers, the Israeli army that are now going on for 2 years. I'm shedding the light on the Global Sumud Flotilla because to me, as a rather senior activist, it represents an extraordinary moment of people power. If I were to make a recollection, of course, you may not have even been born by the time, I would like to recall the moment when 500 people, over 500 people, occupied Sarajevo under siege in 1993 because they wanted to, break the siege of a fantastic city open to many cultures, to coexistence, to multi-ethnicity that was under the attacks of nationalist forces. And of course, it was a completely different example. Now, the Global Sumud Flotilla is actually the wind of popular reaction, popular activism, popular indignation that doesn't want to stay put. It actually wants to give a very provocative sign to the moral inertia and the silence and the complicity of the international community, which is still allowing Benjamin Netanyahu to continue his brutal genocidal attacks on Gaza, on the Gaza Strip, but also on the West Bank. This is, really a people power example that we can mobilize, we can unite forces, and we can actually shake society by doing so. When you look at the map here, you see that all the green, the dark green colors represent the 44 countries that actually make the global Sumud flotilla. And as you can see, the thing is very relevant for us because there are several European countries involved. I come from Italy, and Italy, of course, is really at the forefront of this flotilla simply for geographical reasons. We are facing the Mediterranean, and they actually left the flotilla itself, started from Spain, but then Italy first, and then Greece, the final port from where they are now heading to the Gaza waters. I really want to highlight the importance of this mobilization because it is relevant for what we are going to say later, because I guess that some of you have followed and are still following the developments of this enormous global initiative. Just a few minutes before this presentation, I was talking to one of the people inside one of the ships in the flotilla, saying that another flotilla is being prepared from African countries. You got from Mali, Niger, and Senegal. So this will continue if the Israeli forces attack the global Sumud flotilla heading to Gaza. There will be new flotillas moving to liberate, so to speak, the people of Gaza. With all the crews and all the people on the ground, as we can see, that are demonstrating, supporting, and following what this fantastic, this fantastic group of sailing boats and ships are doing together to enhance, advance, and densify solidarity, the feeling of humanity, the principles of humanity and solidarity. I thought it was necessary to start our conversation with this absolutely unprecedented experience of people power, popular movement, and involvement of citizens of all sorts. Not necessarily those most engaged in political activity, not necessarily those engaged in civil society organizations, but only people, simply people who care, who are indignated, and who are no longer supporting the sense of impotence that has featured our lives over the last 2 years. And from the global Sumud flotilla, I want to throw you back to an Italian singer, Giorgio Gaber, who has written a fantastic song a long time ago in the 70s. The title of the song was Freedom, and I want to share with you this very important, I will not sing, I promise, but I want to share with you the beautiful words of this song that are constantly coming up into my mind, and they are constantly evoked. For me, are really stones that I have in my hands all the time to give me a sense of a reason of what I'm doing in my professional work and also in my activist work. Giorgio Gaber says that freedom is not staying up a tree. It is not even having an opinion. Freedom is not a free space. Freedom is participation. You good people are young, Of course, you come from different walks of life, from different countries, from different family backgrounds, from different experiences. But I want all of you, each one of you, to really pay attention to this sentence. Freedom is participation. And I will insist on this. Freedom is participation, indeed. Now, the relationship which links up participation, representation, right of initiative, and democracy stands out as one of the most complex and complicated also, one of the most debated and controversial arenas in the context of political sciences. Europe is no exception. This happens also in the controversies, in the political analysis, in the political arena, in the political science arena. This is also debated in Europe. Now, in this relationship, as I said, between participation, representation, right of initiative, and democracy, we can surely identify a terrain of tension, and often even a terrain of conflict, which is activated among institutions, supranational or national institutions, local authorities and local administrations, and the actors of civil society, societal actors that are engaged, that are sensitive, that are committed, and that are present in all societies. They are indeed a fundamental component of each of our societies. Wherever you are, wherever you come from, I'm sure that you have been acquainted or you are aware and that you will have civil society, engaged civil society actors that are working in your society. So this relationship, as I said, is a tense and at times conflictual relationship. But it is also a terrain of learning, of citizenship learning, apprenticeship, political learning, social relations, and creativity innovations. This relationship is also a place where knowledge and emancipation occur. Things are never easy, but in the complexity of how to position oneself in between institutions, a civil society, the needs of the people, the representation of one cause for which you're going to be advocate. Well, in all of this complexity, you always evolve as individuals and as collectives, because exercising participation for all its complexities and difficulties is always an enriching process. Now, when we talk about democratic participation in the context of the European institutions, what do we mean? And above all, what does it imply in real terms? What is this participation? Now, talking about Europe, when we talk about participation, democratic participation, we do not only mean caring for the electoral appointments that we as citizens of Europe have every 5 years. The last one, if you remember, was in 2024, when we voted for the new composition of the European Parliament, basically the only one institution that is truly and authentically democratic in the European architecture. Participation is also voting, of course, but it cannot be limited or circumscribed to this action of going to the polls and vote. It is not only that. There are many more ingredients in the kitchen of democratic participation that we need to consider if you are, devoted to coming on board as active citizens. First of all, you need to cherish or you need to feel, you need to sense if you have an interest in the public in the public space, in the polis, in the city, in the public interest. And if you are intending to support and promote and feel committed to what we call the common good, the interest of everybody. This is very important, as we live at a time where profits often take over human rights, take over commons, social commons, take over the public interest. So the trigger of a keen interest in the polis is, I think, the primary condition for becoming an active citizen who cares and who wants to be involved. You also need to think about your determination in terms of generating transformative actions and processes for society, for the benefit of society. You know, it can start at school. When you see a form of injustice at school, you don't let it go. You take action. You mobilize. You talk to your peers, to your pals. You talk to your friends. You just basically share your feeling of discomfort for the injustice. Well, that's the beginning of your urge to change the injustice you have seen, to actually produce a new situation from the accident or for the injustice you have noticed. That's where it starts. It may start even in the family. It starts in whichever crowd or collective you are in. It starts from the small, but that's the trigger, the flame, this determination that you can feel you have, you cherish. And if you do have it, please kindle it and nourish it. Don't get rid of it. It is so important to really make sure that it stays and it expands and it actually contaminates positively other people. You also have to be aware of the potentials and values that inhabit every concerned individual or every concerned community of action. When you feel something unjust happening, when you realize that, for example, transport in your community produces accidents, or that it is not fair for people not to be able to go to school because the fares of the schools are too high, or the prices of the books are too high, and you want to change the situation, well, in this desire, in this aspiration, there is a transformative urge that is a value. You want to bring justice. You want to allow everyone to have access to the rights that you also have access to. So this is something that is very important, and in every individual, in all of us. I know that, and I'm saying this also as a journalist, I know that bad news always make it to the headlines and good news don't. But there is a lot of social poetry going on around us, and there is a lot of good happening around us, which doesn't make it to the front page of newspapers or the TV news. And we need to intercept that social poetry and see how good it is in its silent underground beneficial effects. I think we have to learn from it, understand that there are a lot of opportunities around us, look at the potentials of change that come from ordinary people in ordinary places, and reproduce them and enhance them and promote them, and let other people know of the good that is already around us. And then, of course, if you want to bring change, if you want to have a key to develop or to kindle your natural interest for the common good, well, instincts are good, but you really have to study a lot. I think there is a condition of, increasing your knowledge, understanding the reality around you, starting from, as I said, your neighborhood, from your city, from your region, from your country, and then expand at the European level. You have to cherish and develop and advance your knowledge. And knowledge also brings kind of a better understanding of what you can really do or not do, or how to do things. And this knowledge also, in a way, determines a level of incremental trust in the political game, in the political activism, and also in the political institutions, of course, the European ones, but not only the European institutions. And of course, what we are saying about Europe applies also to higher global level. I'm thinking about the United Nations or other international fora. But let's stay, let's confine ourselves to the European Union, which is already a pretty complex exercise. What are the conditions for a democratic participation in the European context and above this and beyond this? Well, first of all, if you want to act, if you want to be an active citizen and to exercise your right of initiative, this should come out of your free choice. There should be no fear, no coercion. It should be a voluntary act, maybe triggered by a collective dynamic, but it should be your choice. There should also be spaces for individual or collective agency. What I'm saying is that there should be entities or opportunities, spaces, even, institutional spaces, for example, the school, for some of you, the parish, for others, the organization. There are NGOs, trade unions, there are professional associations, academia, journalist associations, where you can, perhaps have a look and find the space for you to start something. You see something wrong? You may want to tell a journalist that you have seen a crime, for example, that you have seen something that has been an abuse. And you can talk to the journalist, and you can talk to your, to the school, to your teacher, or even to the principals, and start sharing this action. So the spaces must be there, available for you to act. And of course, there must be also formal instruments and channels of action. And this, of course, refers very much to Europe. Now, there are many, many forms. It's amazing. This list, I tried to recollect it with you, for you, and I was myself a bit surprised of how many things we can do. And I'm sure that this long list doesn't comprehend everything. I'm sure that there are additional things that we can do. Democratic participation is really very much based on creativity, on inventiveness, on ingenuity, on being able to find something that is cool, really cool, very fine for that specific action that you want to advance. And it's up to you, really, it's up to you. But let me go through this very long list. Of course, democratic participation, as we said earlier, goes through voting. That's the obvious. We said it's not enough, but we should go and vote. We should not kind of neglect voting. Voting is the most formal moment where we can say where we stand. So I in no way want to downplay the act of voting, of going to the ballots, of actually understanding exactly who promises what, who wants to do what, and make your aware, conscious choice. But voting is not it. It's not enough. You go to the ballot, you just click you put your choice, and it's over, and we see each other in the next 5 years. No. Activism, democratic participation is, let's say, a kind of a daily act. It's a way of living. It's a way of being, of crossing the period of history that you are experiencing. Well, what else can we do beyond voting? If you have anything that you want to raise, if you have anything you really want to advocate for, you can reach out to decision makers, starting from your local level. your national level, and then, move higher to the European level. Of course, even we have members of the European Parliament scattered in all our countries, so we can easily identify and reach a member of parliament to share with this woman or this man the instance that you want to bring. You can do volunteering. As a young person, that's how my story started. Volunteering, I just mentioned here a few organizations that you are maybe aware of: Amnesty International, Greenpeace, Médecins Sans Frontières, Oxfam. You have many where you can start practicing your activism and learn as a volunteer. You can protest and you can organize social mobilization, including going on strike. For example, on the 22nd of September, Italy had a general strike, a complete general strike for Gaza. This was the first case in Europe and the first case globally of one entire country stopping for one day with 81 demonstrations scattered all over the country to express indignation and to ask for action to stop the genocide in Gaza. There are many things that you can do. Also boycotting practices and products based on ethical grounds. You can decide that you don't want to go to a bank, or you can discuss with your family to, scrutinize the kind of bank your family has the bank account at, because maybe the bank is not performing really very good transactions, financial transactions with your money, and you want to shift to a more ethical bank, or to start action, starting to write to the director of your bank to tell him or her that, the fact that the money, for example, is transacted in fossil fuels or in gas or in speculative transactions is not compatible with your values and with your ethical standards. So you start and engage, or weapons, for example, transactions for weapons exports is not compatible with your values, with your family values. You start acting, and you perhaps even decides to leave that bank and boycott that bank. These are actions that already exist. You can find them if you browse through the web. I myself have stopped buying and using the Nestlé products for the last 30 years. One of the initial boycott initiatives was boycotting Nestlé for the actions that the multinational companies did vis-a-vis the women in developing countries that were persuaded not to breastfeed their babies, but to take their milk substitutes that they were producing, which caused thousands of babies dying, especially in Africa. This is a rather old story, but a strong story that for me is a kind of a point of non-return. I will never, ever buy anything from Nestlé. We can write and sign petitions. I'm sure you keep receiving through the social media petitions, statements, something with change.org, avaz.org. They constantly invite you to sign something. This is important. It is always important to sign if you believe that the cause they are calling on is important. You can write a piece, an article. You can even write something on your social media and disseminate it. I mean, this is a very short statement of yours. But sometimes this very short statement, are spread with a lot of dissemination and a lot of attracting a lot of attention. This is also a way in which you are basically telling everyone, I care. I want to tell you what I think. I tell you what I've seen and I don't like. I want change. So it doesn't have to be an open, an opinion piece. Of course, if you are able of writing an opinion piece, that's even better. But the two things, it's not a question of value. The two things are both extremely useful. You can collect, maybe collectively and together with other people, discuss debates on, okay, this is wrong. What can we do to make it better, to improve this situation that we don't like? We individually don't have the answers to all the problems. I think it is so important that democratic participation is not exercised individually only, but is actually a commonality of aspiration and intentions that bring a broader intelligence into the space of deciding what we want to propose to policymakers, to the school principal, to whoever is in charge, to improve the current situation, which is not good. You can start, I mean, not you individually, but organizations like the ones that I mentioned before, especially Greenpeace, has started to undertake strategic litigations, to bringing responsible actors to courts, including governments. As you are young people, I really want to share with you the case of Greenpeace working with a group of Norwegian students who won a case a few years ago, challenging the Norwegian government to break the Norwegian constitutions because of the constant expansion of the drillings off the shores of Norway. Drilling of the shores, which of course produces a lot of environmental damage. And this group of young people whose average age was 17-year-old, together with Greenpeace, which had the know-how, the legal structures, the support and the outreach capacity to develop this initiative of young people, they managed actually to win and to force the government of Norway to actually reorient their policies. So as you can see, even if it is a group of young people, if you just knock the right door of the organization that has the know-how, you can even start a strategic litigation, as has been the case of the young people in Norway. You can engage in and with elected or representative bodies. You can engage with members of parliament, start following them. You can go to meetings. You can even start and originate initiatives, meetings, dialogues, debates, public events where you invite these people to talk. You can engage also with the journalists, as I mentioned earlier. There are very important independent pool of journalists who are now more and more digging into the ripples of this system of capitalism that is not working well, and the violation of human rights that it produces, and all the abuses and the violence that comes with it. So there is an opportunity here also to be the kind of a sentinels of injustices that journalism is really, independent journalism is really interested in. And then you can do research activity, but you may be even doing film making. And here I want to give you an example of a story that I have had the privilege of experiencing. A friend of mine who is a film director, he's really a film director. He has done a lot of movies on migration. With one of his movies, we started, the movie was called The Order of Things, talking about migration issues. We started actually the forum to change the order of things. We had initiatives, we had a lot of mobilization of people in Italy, and then it became a European forum, and it is now extremely active, putting pressure on the European authorities, the Commission and the Parliament, to stop the scandalous policies that Europe is having towards migrants. So it started with a movie and it became a thing that is so much bigger than that. But of course, it's not, I mean, this list is encouraging. There are, as you can see, there are many things that can be done, but there are also barriers here. And we need to be realistic, and we need to know them and denominate them, because that's inevitable first, but also important to try and go beyond the barriers. So if we wanted to have a reflection on democratic participation, especially with the lenses of young generations, and I am actually basing these slides on interviews with young people and documents and researches that have been done in the context of the European institutions, which actually care quite a lot for young generations' involvement in political activism and in citizens' initiatives. Of course, as it is obvious, some of the obstacles are connected to the fact that we don't know what to do on how to participate. Not just young people, many people in Europe, many ordinary people of all generations, they don't have a clue on where to start, how to start. That is why this course, which I'm introducing to you today now, is so important. Because this course intention is precisely to give you a little bit of knowledge about the toolkit of how to operate in the European context. So to overcome the lack of information on how to participate, what to do, where to start. There is also the fear that my voice, your voice will not be heard. This is another restitution coming from young people. Of course, the voices are not always immediately listened. It's a really challenging endeavor. But, if you are not heard the first time, well, you shout louder. Your voice has to increase, or you have to increase the number of voices singing together the same slogan, so that at one point you will have to be heard. And in that respect, I go back to the Global Sumut Flotilla, because the big group, the big lining of 40 ships from 44 countries is a voice that no one can afford not to listen. It is manifesting itself materially, visibly, with a lot of support, and that voice, which has been completely ignored for 2 years, Free Palestine, Stop the Genocide, is now become the agenda and the concern of many governments, mobilizing presidents, ministers of foreign affairs, defense ministers. So the voice grew, and then it's heard. Of course, sometimes we say, yeah, it would be great to be activist, but I don't have much time. I have to study, I have to do other things, or I have to work. I have a very limited time to do things. This is an objective constraint. I mean, one cannot stop doing the activity of studying, going to school, or working. So how am I going to be committed to give a contribution that is compatible with my life? Life behaviors, life attitudes, life organizations can also change, but there are obvious obstacles in our daily life. So sometimes this is felt as a limit that is unsurmountable, and the collectiveness helps you to surmount this, I tell you by experience. There is also lack of confidence, a sense of distance from the formal institutions. Well, Europe is too far away from me. I mean, who am I to really impact on the European institutions? Who am I to impact even on my national government? Yeah, I know I'm right, but, I'm too little, I'm too simple, I'm too humble, I'm too ordinary to be able to make any impact. Well, this is never true. People power. People have the power, as a beautiful song recites. And I think we really need to remember that people do have the power. And once again, that freedom is exercising this power in participation. And of course, sometimes you feel that policy making, the political choices of our governments at the national and at the European level are getting so far away from the real needs of the people that you feel completely, distrustful, and you feel kind of impotent and lost. Look at the fact that Europe is now, instead of thinking again or continue to think about the next generation EU, the huge program set up after the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, now it is reverting much of the funding to rearm. This is crazy. This is absolutely scandalous. And yet we need to stop this, precisely because it is harsh to digest, precisely because it is a scandal, precisely because it is quite obscene to invest in weapons when there are so many social needs, especially for young generations, that need to be met. We need to mobilize instead of feeling impotent. And then, of course, there is an increasing lack of trust in our national democracies. Democracies are, are objectively shrinking. Democracies are becoming more feeble, more exposed to power of money, the power of oligarchies, to also the power of nationalism, of patriarchal forces. That's true, it's an objective thing. But how can we stop, or how can we contain this involution, this awful trend? Simply densifying democracies, pulling ourselves into the game of democracy. And if you look at, young people, you have a sense of priority. This is actually the charter of the latest youth survey 2025, which is actually carried out regularly by European institutions. And the sample is of respondents is people of basically your age, from 16 to 30, who actually have a very clear priority of what the real needs are. While Europe, the European Commission and the European institutions are thinking about weapons, well, you guys, as young people, are thinking about the rising of prices and the cost of living, therefore the economic policies and the erosion of social protection that comes with the current policies in place. You talk and you are very concerned, rightly so, and very worried about environment and climate change. This is for you a priority, as it is indeed. The economic situations and the conditions of jobs, the decrease of the rights, of labor rights in all of Europe, the humiliation of labor in many, many countries, in many, many forms. Even if you are sometimes a teacher, an engineer, a lawyer, you see that all that consolidation of rights that your parents had is actually being lost. This is a concern that you rightly have. Social protection, access to healthcare, education and training. There is a clear agenda that is reality-driven and needs-driven that you have in mind. How can we make sure that this common sense arena, the common sense policy agenda that you have identified, gets enforced? This is the big question. And I hope that this course will actually help you to find your individual and above all collective answers. Now, talking about the spaces and instruments to express activism, citizens' activism, I want to share with you the space of We Move Europe. We Move Europe started exactly 10 years ago in 2015. I remember being at the first meeting where we kind of conceptualized the initiative, the values, the main goals of, and the name, of course, of We Move Europe. And from this initial idea, this initiative has been able to mobilize hundreds of thousands of European citizens around very key issues that have been identified. In 10 years, We Move Europe has been able to collect signatures and bring this mobilization bottom up to the policymakers with the goal, for example, of regulating the use of plastic in Europe, to campaign against violence on women, to campaign also to protect the ocean waters, and to be engaged and to take actions to defend migrants' rights. It has been a very powerful tool of social mobilization, grassroots towards the decision makers. And I strongly invite you all to definitely enter the website of We Move Europe, because this is something that is informal, lively, it's a collective, and it is an expression of real democratic participation and right of initiative at the European level. But then there are also other very formal channels that have been established from the institutions, in a way top down this time. They have been established by the European institutions. One of them is the EU Citizen Initiative, ECI, which I'm sure you will hear more about in the coming lessons of the course. I just want to show here and share with you one of such ECI initiative. By the way, 121 EU citizens initiatives have been registered at this stage as it appears on the ECI website. This one in particular started with the COVID pandemic and with a concern that if science were to produce any new medicines, vaccines, health tools against the contagion, they would not be made accessible to all. So we started this initiative, formal ECI, non-profit on pandemic EU, which involved 12 European countries, a lot of people. We had a lot of the mobilizations, collectors of signatures, because you have to collect 1 million signatures in order for the initiative to advance. Unfortunately, we could not raise the many signatures we needed in the given time. And it was a failure. And it was also surprising, given the fact that we were right in the middle of a pandemic. Although it failed, but we learned so many things about the ECI itself, how to navigate the space and the opportunities that the EU Citizen Initiative does provide to citizens in Europe to mobilize and advance certain specific issues that are considered important. And then there is another initiative that is comparatively new, because the space has been created only recently. Only since the end of 2024, it is possible to bring litigation, a legal action against the European Commission for actions that are perceived as wrongdoing, as negative policies. Such is the case of the European Commission having extended for another 10 years the use of the herbicide glyphosate. This was a decision dated in November 2023. A group of civil society organizations gathered in what is called Pan-Europe, Pesticides Action Network Europe, has identified a series of abuses, of violations of scientific standards, a series of contradictions due to the pressures coming to the European Commission from the lobby of chemicals, and they decided in November 2024 to use these new tools to bring the European Commission to court. This is a group of scientists, civil society players, researchers, activists that are actually putting pressure on the European Commission that when it takes decisions, they are scientifically solid, and above all, they are for the common good and not to be ancillary to the lobbies that always infiltrate activities at the political level in Europe. So this is an ongoing initiative, which is extremely important and extremely interesting. All of the things that I've tried to present to you are gathered here in a few readings and suggestions, including the fact that, yes, we move Europe, but as I include in the documentary listed here, we can also move the world. Everything we learn about Europe can be, replicated at a higher level, at a global level, for example, with the United Nations. And I hope these links and the readings and the suggestions that I have produced here will be actually useful for you. I conclude here. I hope you enjoy the presentation, and I hope you have been encouraged to follow the course and to feel that each one of you, each one of us, can be the protagonist of Europe's future. And this course is aimed at giving you the knowledge and the possibility to increase your agency, to increase your capabilities, and enhance the agency to be full-fledged citizens of this part of the world, which is really in a very big crisis, but still, of course, needs a new energy, new forces to reorient itself into the right direction for the future. I wish you all the best, and I thank you for listening to me, and good luck with the course. Goodbye.